When my husband of 38 years told me he wanted a divorce, I laughed in his face. 6 months later, I was a widow with $100 million. That's when I realized life doesn't give you what you deserve. It gives you what you demand. If you're watching this, be sure to subscribe and comment below if you've ever had someone try to take what's rightfully yours. Trust me, you'll want to see how I handled it. The day I won the lottery was the same day I buried Harold. Ironic, isn't it? For decades, I'd watched him chase success, coming home late with excuses about closing deals and important clients. I'd smile, warm his dinner, and pretend I couldn't smell the perfume on his collar. All those years, I was the good wife, patient, understanding, forgiving. The foundation he built his empire on. "Elaine," he'd say, patting my hand like I was some kind of faithful dog, "what would I do without you keeping everything together?" What indeed, Harold? What indeed? When the doctor diagnosed his heart condition, I wasn't surprised. Type A personalities like Harold burn bright and fast. 3 heart attacks later, he was gone, leaving me with his company, his debts, and his mistresses. Yes, plural. As it turns out, my husband had been a very busy man. But fate has a wicked sense of humor. 2 weeks after the funeral, I got the call about my lottery ticket. $100 million. Just like that, the debts didn't matter anymore. The whispers at the country club about poor Elaine and how will she manage faded away. Suddenly, I was Elaine Blackwood, wealthy widow, a force to be reckoned with. You should celebrate. My son Michael told me over the phone from his apartment in New York. He's an investment banker, just like his father wanted. Just like his father. Do something big, Mom. You deserve it after everything. My daughter Stephanie agreed. A party would be good for you, she said, juggling her twins on her hip. She'd married well, just like I taught her. Unlike me, she'd chosen a faithful man. Let people see you're not broken. I wasn't broken. I was reborn. So, I planned the party of the century at my estate. 200 guests, the finest champagne, a 10-piece orchestra. I wanted everyone who'd ever pitied me to see what I'd become. I wanted to stand in that ballroom in a gown that cost more than most people's cars and show the world that Elaine Blackwood was just getting started at 60. The invitations went out, thick cream cardstock with gold foil lettering. Elaine Blackwood requests the pleasure of your company to celebrate new beginnings. I personally addressed each one, including those to the women I knew had shared Harold's bed. Especially them. I wanted them to see me triumphant, not as the discarded wife, but as the victor. One invitation gave me particular satisfaction: Victoria Chambers. The youngest, the boldest, and from what my private investigator told me, the one Harold had planned to leave me for before his heart gave out. At 35, she was the trophy he'd never get to display. I made sure her invitation was delivered by hand. The night of the party arrived with perfect weather, a warm June evening with stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. I stood before my mirror in a crimson gown that hugged every curve I'd maintained through decades of Pilates and strict dieting. My silver hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and around my neck gleamed the ruby pendant Harold had given me on our 20th anniversary. Before I knew about the others. "You look stunning, Mrs. Blackwood," said Rosa, my housekeeper of 15 years. The only person in the household who'd stayed loyal through everything. "Thank you, Rosa." I turned, examining my profile. "Do you think they'll be surprised?" "They'll be shocked." She smiled, adjusting my necklace. "And jealous." "Good." I picked up my clutch. That's exactly what I'm counting on. The ballroom was transformed, crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow over tables draped in white silk, centerpieces of blood-red roses and white lilies, champagne fountains sparkling at either end of the room. The orchestra played softly as guests began to arrive, air-kissing my cheeks and offering congratulations that only months ago would have been condolences. I watched them all. The business associates who'd underestimated me, the country club wives who'd whispered behind my back, the relatives who'd suddenly found time to visit now that I had money. Vultures, the lot of them. But I smiled graciously, accepting their compliments with the poise Harold had always admired. The perfect hostess, even now. "Elaine, "You look absolutely marvelous," cooed Margaret Holloway, my neighbor and sometimes friend. "No one would ever guess you'd been through such a tragedy." "Money is the best cosmetic, Margaret," I replied, watching her smile falter. "And freedom. You should try both sometime." I moved through the crowd like a shark through shallow water, aware of every ripple, every reaction. My son Michael arrived with his latest girlfriend, another willowy blonde with more ambition than sense. My daughter Stephanie came with her husband Robert and apologized that they couldn't stay late because of the babysitter. I nodded, understanding. Family obligations. Something Harold had never quite grasped. And then she arrived. Victoria Chambers swept into my ballroom like she owned it, wearing a black dress that left little to the imagination and diamonds I recognized immediately, the set Harold had claimed he'd bought for his mother's birthday last year. His mother, who'd been dead for a decade. On Victoria's wrist glittered the tennis bracelet that had gotten lost during our trip to the Hamptons 3 summers ago. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, that slow, confident smile of a woman who knows she's playing with marked cards. She sauntered over, champagne flute already in hand. "Elaine," she purred, air-kissing near my cheek. "What a lovely party." Harold would have been proud. Would he? I tilted my head, examining her like an interesting specimen. I rather think he'd be disappointed to miss the main event. "And what's that?" she asked, sipping her champagne. "Me," I said simply. "Living well without him." Something flashed in her eyes. Anger, perhaps, or calculation. "He talked about you, you know. Said you were the perfect corporate wife. Supportive, undemanding. Conveniently blind when it suited you." The barb struck home, but decades of hiding my feelings served me well. I merely smiled. "And he said you were insatiable. In every way. I suppose we all have our talents." I left her standing there, fuming, and made my way to the center of the room. It was time for the toast, the moment I'd been planning since I decided on this party. The orchestra fell silent as I clinked a spoon against my champagne flute. "Friends, family, and acquaintances," I began, my gaze sweeping the room. "Thank you for joining me tonight. Some of you have been part of my life for decades. Others, my eyes found Victoria, more recently. But you're all here to witness something remarkable." The room hushed, all eyes on me. 6 months ago, I was Elaine Blackwood, devoted wife and mother. Today, I stand before you as something else entirely, a woman who has discovered that life begins when you stop living it for someone else. I raised my glass higher, to new beginnings, and to the delicious unpredictability of fate. As glasses were raised, I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. Victoria, standing too close, her hand moving quickly over my flute. A small crystal vial disappearing back into her clutch. Her smile never wavering. Time seemed to slow. In that split second, I saw everything clearly. The hatred in her eyes, the years of humiliation crystallized into this one deadly moment. The future she'd planned where she would comfort the grieving guests before taking her place as the woman who'd captured Harold Blackwood's heart, now tragically left to mourn both him and his widow. Without hesitation, without allowing my expression to change, I switched our glasses as I turned to face her. "A special toast," I said, looking directly into her eyes. "To those who believe they deserve what belongs to others. May they receive exactly what they've earned." We drank. The champagne tasted especially sweet. The orchestra resumed playing. Guests returned to their conversations. And I watched Victoria Chambers from across the room, counting the minutes in my head. It didn't take long. First, she touched her throat. Then, her hand trembled as she set down her glass. Perspiration beaded on her forehead as she excused herself from a conversation with one of Harold's business partners. She took one step, then another, her legs buckling beneath her like a newborn colt's. When she collapsed, the scream came from Margaret Holloway, always one for dramatics. The crowd parted as several people rushed to Victoria's side. Among them was Dr. Patterson, our family physician for 20 years. "Give her space," he shouted, loosening the neckline of her dress. Someone call an ambulance. I stood perfectly still, my untouched champagne flute still in my hand, watching the scene unfold as if from a great distance. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained a mask of shocked concern. What happened? I asked, approaching slowly. Is she all right? Dr. Patterson looked up, his face grim. Possible allergic reaction or seizure. Has she eaten anything unusual? I wouldn't know, I replied, my voice steady. We aren't exactly close. The ambulance arrived with wailing sirens that scattered my well-heeled guests like startled birds. Victoria was carried out on a stretcher, oxygen mask covering her face, her perfect black dress hiked up indecently around her thighs. So much for dignity. As the paramedics loaded her into the ambulance, I felt a presence beside me. Michael, his face pale with concern. Mom, do you know her well? He asked. She was an acquaintance of your father's, I replied carefully. From work. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. He'd always been perceptive, too perceptive sometimes. Just from work? I met his gaze steadily. Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. He flinched at the old phrase, what I'd say when he'd ask about his father's late nights as a child. Now, as an adult, understanding dawned in his eyes. Jesus, Mom, he whispered. Did you know? All this time. Go check on your sister, I said instead of answering. She's upset by all this commotion. As he walked away, I felt another presence, Rosa, silent and watchful by my side. Mrs. Blackwood, she said quietly, the police will want to speak with you. I expect they will. I handed her my still full champagne flute. Dispose of this, would you? And have a fresh glass brought to me. Her eyes met mine, dark and knowing. She'd been with me through everything. Harold's affairs, the late-night phone calls, the lipstick-stained shirts I'd silently washed. She nodded once and disappeared with the glass. The party dissolved quickly after that. Guests murmured apologies as they collected their coats and slipped away, eager to distance themselves from potential scandal. By midnight, the ballroom stood empty except for the staff silently clearing tables. I retreated to Harold's, my study, poured myself 2 fingers of his favorite scotch, and sat in the leather chair behind the massive oak desk. The same desk where he'd conducted business, made deals, probably seduced Victoria during late-night strategy sessions. I ran my fingers over the polished wood, wondering how many secrets it held. The doorbell rang at precisely 1:17 a.m. I knew because I'd been watching the antique grandfather clock in the corner, listening to its steady tick as I sipped scotch and considered my position. Rosa appeared at the study door. Police, Mrs. Blackwood. 2 detectives. I nodded, straightening my posture but not rising. Show them in. They entered like most police do, cautiously, eyes scanning the room, taking in details. The man was older, maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair and the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. The woman was younger, sharp-featured, with a notebook already in hand. Mrs. Blackwood, the man said, showing his badge. I'm Detective Reeves. This is Detective Santos. We're here about the incident at your party tonight. Of course. I gestured to the chairs across from the desk. Please sit. Can I offer you coffee? It's been a long night. No, thank you, Santos replied, pen poised. We just need to ask a few questions about Miss Chambers. Victoria, I said, nodding. A terrible thing. Is she all right? The detectives exchanged a glance. She's in critical condition, Reeves said carefully. The doctors are running tests to determine what caused her collapse. How awful, I murmured, taking another sip of scotch. We weren't close, but no one deserves such a thing. And how did you know Miss Chambers? Santos asked, watching me closely. I smiled faintly. She worked with my late husband occasionally. In what capacity, I couldn't say. Harold didn't discuss business with me. But you invited her to your celebration? I invited many of Harold's associates. It seemed appropriate. I set down my glass. Is there something specific you're looking for, detectives? Reeves leaned forward. Several witnesses reported seeing you and Miss Chambers exchange words before your toast. One described it as tense. Did they? I raised an eyebrow. How dramatic. We exchanged pleasantries, nothing more. Though I did compliment her on her diamonds. They looked familiar. Santos made a note. Mrs. Blackwood, where were you when Miss Chambers collapsed? Circulating among my guests. It's what a good hostess does. And your relationship with the victim. Victim. I interrupted. That's a loaded word, detective. As far as we know, she had an unfortunate medical episode at my party. Unless you have reason to believe otherwise. Another glance between them. Reeves cleared his throat. The hospital found traces of an unknown substance in her system. They're running toxicology now. How concerning. I kept my voice level. But surely you don't think. We're not thinking anything yet, Mrs. Blackwood. Santos cut in. We're gathering information. Standard procedure. Of course. I stood, smoothing my gown. Well, you have my full cooperation. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's been an exhausting evening. Rosa will show you out. As if summoned, Rosa appeared at the door. The detectives rose reluctantly. We'll be in touch, Reeves said, handing me his card. Please don't leave town. Where would I go? I smiled. My life is here. After they left, I locked the study door and went to the small safe hidden behind Harold's collection of first edition Hemingways. Inside was the usual, important documents, emergency cash, my grandmother's pearls, and a small leather journal. Harold's private notebook, the one he thought I didn't know about. I opened it to the most recent entries, scanning his meticulous handwriting. March 15th, transferred $50,000 to V's account. She's getting impatient. Says she needs security. March 30th, meeting with Jeffries about the divorce. Need to protect assets. He doesn't suspect. April 10th, V demanding more. Threatening to tell E everything if I don't make arrangements soon. Becoming a liability. April 12th, heart palpitations again. Dr. P insists I reduce stress. Ironic. The final entry, dated 3 days before his fatal heart attack. April 20th, V says she'll wait until after the divorce. I promised her everything will be taken care of in the will. What he doesn't know won't hurt her. 1 more month, and I'm free. I closed the journal, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. Harold had planned it all. The divorce, leaving me with nothing while he rode off into the sunset with Victoria. Only his heart hadn't cooperated with his timeline. And now Victoria had tried to finish what they'd started. Take me out of the picture, and what? Make a claim on the estate? On the lottery winnings? It seemed far-fetched, but then again, so did poisoning someone at their own party. I returned the journal to the safe and locked it. Evidence if I needed it. But I hoped it wouldn't come to that. The next morning brought sunshine streaming through my bedroom windows and a call from Stephanie. Mom, it's all over the news, she said without preamble. They're saying that woman from your party was poisoned. What's going on? Rumors and speculation, I replied, sitting up against my pillows. You know how people love drama. The news said police questioned you. Standard procedure. I was the host. I kept my voice light. How are the twins? Don't change the subject, Mom. Stephanie's voice dropped. Michael told me. He told me she was one of Dad's women. Is that true? I closed my eyes, suddenly tired. My children had idolized their father. I'd protected Harold's image even after his death, letting them believe he'd been the devoted family man he pretended to be. Now, the truth was seeping out like blood from a wound. Your father was complicated, I said finally. He made choices I didn't agree with, but he loved you and Michael very much. That's not an answer. Her voice caught. All these years, you never said anything. What good would it have done? I asked. To know your father was flawed? That your mother was too proud to leave? Silence stretched between us. Then, are you in trouble, Mom? No, darling, I assured her. Everything will be fine. Give the babies a kiss from Grandma. After hanging up, I scrolled through the local news on my tablet. Sure enough, Victoria's collapse was front-page news. Socialite hospitalized after suspicious incident at millionaire widow's celebration. The article mentioned sources close to the investigation suggesting foul play and longtime acquaintances hinting at a connection between Victoria and Harold. My phone rang again, Michael this time. "Mom, I'm coming over," he said, his voice tight with stress. "Stay put and don't talk to anyone until I get there." "Don't be dramatic, Michael. I'm perfectly fine. Victoria Chambers is saying you tried to kill her." My blood went cold. "She's conscious, as of an hour ago, and talking. A lot." I could hear traffic sounds in the background. He was already driving. "I've called Gerald Hoffman." "Your father's attorney?" "Why?" "Because you need one, Mom. Now." I hung up and sat very still, considering my options. Victoria was alive and accusing me. The police would be back soon with more than questions. The carefully constructed veneer of my life was cracking, revealing the rot beneath. Rosa knocked softly before entering with my morning tea. "The young Mr. Blackwood called," she said, setting down the tray. "He's very upset." "Yes, he's coming over." I accepted the cup she offered. "Things may get complicated, Rosa." She nodded, her face impassive. "The police called as well. They want you to come to the station this afternoon." "Did they say why?" "No, but a detective is waiting downstairs. Not the same ones as last night." I set down my teacup with a soft clink. "Well, we shouldn't keep him waiting. Tell him I'll be down in 20 minutes. After Rosa left, I moved to my closet and considered my options carefully. Not the crimson of last night. Too bold, too memorable. Instead, I chose a dove gray suit, conservative but expensive, with pearl earrings and low heels. The outfit of a respectable widow, not a vengeful one. As I applied my makeup, I studied my reflection. The face looking back at me was composed, dignified, showing none of the turmoil beneath. Good. I'd need that mask today. Downstairs, a young detective waited in the foyer, looking uncomfortable among the antiques and oil paintings that Harold had collected to impress visitors. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said, standing as I descended the staircase. "Detective Morales." "Thank you for seeing me." "Of course, Detective." I extended my hand. Though I must say, 2 visits in less than 12 hours suggests either remarkable efficiency or unusual concern on the part of the police department. He didn't smile. "New information has come to light. We'd like you to come downtown to answer some additional questions." "Am I under arrest, Detective Morales?" He hesitated.
"No, ma'am."
"Not at this time. Then I'll be happy to accompany you after my son and attorney arrive." I checked my watch. They should be here within the hour. "Mrs. Blackwood, I strongly recommend that I cooperate." "I intend to, but not without counsel." I gestured to one of the wingback chairs. "Please, make yourself comfortable while we wait. Rosa will bring you coffee." His jaw tightened, but he sat. I took the chair opposite, arranging myself carefully, legs crossed at the ankle, hands folded in my lap. The picture of calm. "While we wait," I said pleasantly, "perhaps you could tell me what Miss Chambers is saying about me." "I'm not at liberty to discuss." "Oh, I think you are." I smiled thinly. "If you're here to question me based on her allegations, I have the right to know what they are." He studied me for a long moment. "She claims you threatened her at the party, that you knew about her relationship with your husband and blamed her for his death." "Interesting." I kept my voice level. "And did she mention switching our champagne glasses? Or the small vial she emptied into mine before the toast?" Morales blinked, caught off guard. "What are you saying, Mrs. Blackwood?" "I'm saying, Detective, that if anyone attempted murder last night, it wasn't me." The front door opened, and I glanced over to see Michael striding in, followed by a silver-haired man in an impeccable suit. Here's my son and Mr. Hoffman now. Perfect timing. Gerald Hoffman had been Harold's attorney for 20 years. He knew where all the bodies were buried, figuratively speaking, of course. He took control of the situation immediately, insisting that any questioning be conducted at his office, not the police station. "My client has nothing to hide," he assured Detective Morales. "But we'll do this properly." As we prepared to leave, Rosa approached with my coat and purse. Mrs. Blackwood, she said quietly. There's a woman at the back door. She says she's Victoria's sister. I froze. What does she want? To speak with you. Privately. Rose's eyes flicked to the men near the front door. She seems distressed. I made a quick decision. Tell her to wait in the garden house. I'll come as soon as I can. Rosa nodded and slipped away. Michael approached, frowning. Everything okay, Mom? Just household matters, I said smoothly. Rosa knows how to handle things while I'm gone. The ride to Hoffman's downtown office was tense. Michael sat beside me in the back of Hoffman's Mercedes, Detective Morales following in his unmarked car. You need to tell me everything, Michael said, his voice low. No more secrets. I looked at my son. So much like his father in appearance, but with a moral compass Harold had never possessed. Could I tell him the truth? That his father had planned to discard me like yesterday's newspaper? That Victoria had tried to poison me? That I had simply allowed her own treachery to consume her instead? Your father wasn't the man you thought he was, I began carefully. He wasn't the man I thought he was either for a long time. Michael's jaw tightened. The affairs? Those were just symptoms. I turned to look out the window at the passing city. The disease was much deeper. He was going to leave me with nothing, Michael. After 38 years, he was going to walk away and take everything we'd built together. And Victoria Chambers was part of that plan? She was the endgame. I met his eyes. But he died before he could file for divorce. And then I won the lottery, which wasn't part of anyone's plan. So, what happened last night? Michael asked, his voice barely audible. Did you do something to her? Before I could answer, we arrived at Hoffman's building. The attorney opened my door, offering his hand to help me out. Not another word until we're inside, he murmured. And Elaine, whatever you did or didn't do, I'm on your side. In Hoffman's sleek corner office, with its panoramic views of the city Harold had once ruled like a small kingdom, Detective Morales repeated his questions. With Hoffman beside me, I told a carefully edited version of the truth. Victoria Chambers was more than my husband's colleague, I acknowledged. They were involved romantically. I discovered this after Harold's death, when I found evidence in his personal papers. And this didn't anger you? Morales asked. Of course it did, I replied calmly. But anger and murder are rather far apart on the emotional spectrum, Detective. She claims you switched champagne glasses with her deliberately. I raised an eyebrow. And why would I do that? Because you knew hers was poisoned. That's an interesting theory. I leaned forward slightly. But if I knew her champagne was poisoned, why would I switch glasses with her? Wouldn't that put me at risk? Morales frowned. She says you suspected she might try something. So, I'm both a murderer and psychic? I smiled coldly. How convenient for her narrative. Mrs. Blackwood, Morales said, his patience visibly thinning. Toxicology found traces of digitalis in Miss Chambers' system, a compound that causes heart failure. How awful. I maintained eye contact. I know nothing about digitalis, Detective. It comes from foxglove, which grows in your garden. Ah. So that was their angle. I nodded thoughtfully. Along with roses, hydrangeas, and a dozen other common plants. I'm not a gardener, Detective. I hire people for that. Hoffman interrupted smoothly. My client has cooperated fully with your questions. Unless you're placing her under arrest, this interview is concluded. Morales looked frustrated but stood. We'll be watching you, Mrs. Blackwood. I'd expect nothing less, I replied. Good day, Detective. After he left, Hoffman turned to me, his expression grave. Elaine level with me. Did you poison that woman? Gerald, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Do you really want me to answer that question? He held my gaze for a long moment, then sighed. No, I suppose I don't. He began gathering papers from his desk. But you should know that Victoria Chambers isn't the only problem you're facing. What do you mean? Harold left some complications in his will. Hoffman looked uncomfortable. Provisions I wasn't aware of until recently. My stomach tightened. What kind of provisions? He made changes shortly before his death. Changes that could impact your inheritance of his estate. But I've already settled his debts. I protested. The company is mine now. The company, yes. Hoffman hesitated. But there's a codicil regarding personal assets and potential claims against the estate. Michael, who had been silent during the interview, spoke up. Are you saying Dad tried to disinherit Mom? Not exactly. Hoffman pulled out a document from his briefcase. But he did include language that would allow for alternative beneficiaries under certain circumstances. I felt cold all over. Victoria. Hoffman nodded grimly. Among others. It seems your husband was hedging his bets, Elaine. Setting things up so that if anything happened to him before the divorce, the vultures could still pick at the carcass. I finished, anger rising in my throat. Even from the grave, he's trying to control me. Mom, Michael said, touching my arm. Let's focus on one problem at a time. First, we need to deal with these accusations. I nodded, my mind racing. Victoria's attempt on my life, Harold's secret will provisions, the police investigation, all threads in a tapestry of betrayal that was still unfolding. Gerald, I said, standing, I need you to fight these claims with everything you've got. I won't be stripped of what's rightfully mine. Not by Harold, not by his mistresses, not by anyone. I'll do my best, Hoffman promised. But Elaine, if there's anything else I should know. I thought of the garden house, where Victoria's sister waited, of Rosa, who knew more than she ever said, of the journal hidden in my safe. No, I said finally. Nothing else. As Michael drove me home, the silence between us was heavy with unasked questions. Finally, as we turned onto the long driveway leading to the estate, he spoke. I don't know what happened last night, he said carefully. And maybe I don't want to know. But Dad's gone, and you're all Stephanie and I have left. We can't lose you too. I reached over and took his hand. You won't lose me, Michael. I promise you that. He squeezed my hand, then let go to park the car. What are you going to do now? I looked up at the house, the mansion Harold had built to showcase his success, the prison where I'd spent decades of my life, and now, finally, my domain. Now, I said, I'm going to talk to Victoria's sister. And then I'm going to war. As we walked toward the front door, I noticed a black sedan parked down the street, just visible through the ornamental gates. Detective Morales, no doubt, keeping watch. Let him watch. He'd see nothing but a grieving widow going about her business. The real drama was about to unfold behind closed doors, where it had always lived in the Blackwood family. And this time, I wouldn't be the victim of the story. This time, I'd be writing the ending myself. Rosa was waiting for me in the kitchen, her face drawn with worry. She's still in the garden house, she said quietly. I brought her tea, but she wouldn't touch it. A ghost of a smile crossed Rosa's face. Can't say I blame her, considering. What's her name? I asked, removing my suit jacket. Rebecca Chambers. She says she flew in from Chicago this morning when she heard about her sister. I nodded, considering my options. Did she seem hostile?
No, señora.
Scared, maybe. Confused.
Rosa hesitated.
She asked if you would come alone. Michael, who had followed me into the kitchen, stiffened. Absolutely not. Mom, this could be a trap. In my own home, I raised an eyebrow. With police watching the property. Still, he insisted. I'm coming with you. I laid a hand on his arm.
No, Michael.
Some conversations need to happen woman to woman. I saw the protest forming on his lips and added, I'll keep my phone on. If I don't call or text you in 15 minutes, come find me. He didn't like it, but he relented. I changed into more casual clothes, linen slacks and a light sweater, and made my way through the garden toward the small stone cottage at the far end of the property. It had once been the caretaker's residence before Harold converted it into a meditation space that I suspected had seen very little meditation. I paused at the door, took a deep breath, and knocked once before entering. The woman who rose from the small settee was unmistakably Victoria's sister, the same high cheekbones and full lips, but where Victoria had been all polished angles and calculated seduction, Rebecca Chambers seemed softer, more genuine. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, her hands trembling slightly as she faced me. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said, her voice hoarse. "Thank you for seeing me." "Please sit," I said, taking the chair across from her. "I understand you've come a long way." She sank back onto the settee. "I came as soon as the hospital called. They said Vicky might not make it." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that. The doctors seemed hopeful last night. There's been kidney damage." Rebecca twisted a tissue in her hands. "They're not sure if it's reversible." "How terrible," I murmured, studying her. "But I'm curious why you wanted to see me. Surely the hospital would be a more appropriate place for you right now." Rebecca looked up, her eyes suddenly sharp despite the tears. "Vicky regained consciousness for a few minutes this morning. She told me to come here."
To talk to you.
"Did she?" I leaned forward slightly. "And what did she think we needed to discuss?" "She said you knew." Rebecca's voice dropped to a whisper. "About the plan." A chill ran through me. "What plan would that be, Miss Chambers?" "Please," she said, almost desperately. "I know how this looks, but I need to understand what happened. Victoria told me she was going to be rich, that after Harold died, everything would be taken care of." "Taken care of," I repeated, the words like ash in my mouth. "Is that how she phrased it?" Rebecca nodded. "She said Harold had promised her that she'd be provided for no matter what, that there were arrangements." "And last night? Did she mention her plans for last night?" Rebecca looked away, shame coloring her cheeks. "She called me yesterday afternoon. She was excited, said she was going to your party. That afterward, everything would change." "Change how?" I pressed. "She didn't say exactly." Rebecca met my eyes again. "But I know my sister, Mrs. Blackwood. Victoria has always wanted shortcuts. Easy money. The path of least resistance. And Harold was that path. One of many." Rebecca's laugh was bitter. "You weren't the first wife she's targeted, just the most lucrative." I sat back, absorbing this. "You make your sister sound like a predator." "Isn't she?" Rebecca shook her head. "We grew up with nothing. Our father left when we were small. Our mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Victoria decided early on that she'd never struggle like that. By latching onto wealthy men. By any means necessary." Rebecca hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. "I found this in Vicky's apartment this morning. I think you should see it." She handed it to me, and I opened it carefully. Inside were dates, names, amounts, a meticulous record of payments, gifts, and promises from various men. Harold's name appeared frequently in the latter pages, along with sums that made my blood boil. The final entry was dated the day before my party. "E's celebration tomorrow. H's plan finally coming together. After tonight, everything changes. The old witch won't know what hit her." I closed the book, my hands steady despite the rage burning inside me. "Your sister seems to have kept detailed records. Victoria has always been organized about her business dealings." Rebecca's voice was hollow. "When we were in high school, she kept a similar book tracking the boys she could manipulate into doing her homework." "And you're showing me this because?" "Because the police think you tried to kill my sister." Rebecca leaned forward. "But after reading this and knowing Vicky, I'm not sure that's what happened." Our eyes met, an understanding passing between us. I didn't confirm or deny anything, merely waited for her to continue. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said finally, "I love my sister. But I also believe in justice. If Victoria tried to harm you, I need to know." "Why?" I asked simply. "What would you do with that information?" Rebecca's shoulders slumped. "I don't know. I need to make sense of this. All my life, I've cleaned up after Victoria's messes, made excuses for her, believed she would change. But this..." She gestured to the notebook. "This is beyond anything I imagined." I considered my options carefully. This woman could be an ally or another enemy. The sister who had always covered for Victoria, or someone finally at the end of her rope. "Rebecca," I said gently, I won't insult your intelligence by pretending I didn't know about your sister and my husband. What happened between us at the party was a reckoning of sorts. Did you poison her? The question was direct, her eyes searching mine.
No, irraplia truthfully.
I did not put poison in anyone's drink last night. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. I needed to hear that. But, I continued, I would advise you to look closely at your sister's actions, at her plans, and to consider who might have had more to lose last night, me or Victoria. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You're saying she. I stood, smoothing my slacks. I'm not saying anything, Rebecca, but I would like to keep this notebook, if you don't mind. It may prove useful in the coming days. She hesitated, then nodded. Take it. I've seen enough. She rose as well, gathering her purse. What happens now? Now, I said, walking her to the door. You return to the hospital. Be the loving sister. And perhaps mention to the police that Victoria had been acting strangely before the party. That she seemed desperate, unstable. Planting seeds of doubt, Rebecca murmured. Growing a garden of truth, I corrected. After all, everything in that notebook is in her own handwriting. After Rebecca left, I sat alone in the garden house for several minutes, examining Victoria's notebook more carefully. There were other names I recognized, business associates of Harold's, men from our social circle, even the husband of a woman I'd considered a friend. Victoria had cast a wide net, but more concerning were the notes about Harold's arrangements. References to documents, to accounts, to provisions that would activate upon his death. Victoria had been confident, too confident, that she would benefit from Harold's passing. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael, 15 minutes up. Everything okay? I replied quickly, fine. Coming back now. As I walked through the garden toward the main house, I noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway, a sleek black Audi with tinted windows. Not police, but someone with money. I quickened my pace. In the front hall, I found Michael in tense conversation with a tall, elegantly dressed woman perhaps a few years younger than me. She turned as I entered, her smile as practiced as her posture. Elaine Blackwood, she said, extending a manicured hand.
I'm Diana Jeffries.
Harold's attorney. I kept my face carefully neutral as I shook her hand. Interesting. I was under the impression that Gerald Hoffman handled all of Harold's legal affairs. Gerald handled the corporate side, she explained smoothly. I managed Harold's personal matters, more delicate issues. Michael shot me a warning glance. Ms. Jeffries says she needs to discuss Dad's estate with you, Mom. Does she? I gestured toward the sitting room. Well then, by all means, let's talk. Diana Jeffries moved with the confidence of a woman accustomed to controlling rooms. She chose the most commanding seat, Harold's favorite armchair, and arranged herself with calculated casualness. I've been out of the country, she began, or I would have contacted you sooner. I only learned of Harold's passing when I returned last week. How unfortunate, I replied, sitting across from her. Though I'm curious why my husband felt the need for a personal attorney separate from his corporate counsel. Diana smiled thinly. Some matters require specialized handling. Such as? She opened her leather portfolio and removed several documents. Harold came to me 6 months before his death to discuss divorce proceedings. He wanted everything prepared but held in confidence until he was ready to move forward. Though I'd suspected as much from his journal entries, hearing it stated so baldly sent a fresh wave of pain through me. 38 years dismissed with bureaucratic efficiency. I see, I said, my voice steady. And these documents are? The divorce filing, which was never submitted. And more importantly, amendments to his will and estate plan. She slid a paper across the coffee table. Harold made certain provisions that take effect regardless of whether the divorce was finalized. I didn't touch the document. Ms. Jeffries, my husband died intestate. We've already settled the estate. She shook her head. That's incorrect. Harold filed a new will with my office 3 weeks before his death. It hasn't been executed because, well, certain complications arose. Such as my mother winning the lottery? Michael asked sharply. Diana's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. That was unexpected, certainly. But the provisions concerning specific bequests remain valid. Bequests to whom? I asked, though I already knew the answer. There are several beneficiaries named. Diana consulted another document. Victoria Chambers is the primary recipient of a trust valued at approximately $12 million. Michael made a choking sound. 12 million? You've got to be kidding. I assure you, this is entirely serious. Diana's voice was cool. Harold was very specific about his wishes. I leaned forward. And when exactly did you plan to inform me of these wishes, Miss Jeffries? After my husband's mistress was settled comfortably with millions of my family's money. Mrs. Blackwood, Diana replied, unruffled. I understand this is upsetting, but the law is clear. These documents were properly executed and witnessed. They represent Harold's legal intentions. His intentions, I repeated. Tell me, did those intentions include his mistress attempting to poison me at my own party? Diana blinked, momentarily caught off guard. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I reached into my pocket and removed Victoria's notebook. It seems Miss Chambers kept very detailed records of her relationship with my husband, including meetings with you. I opened to a page I'd noted earlier and read aloud. March 22nd, met with DJ to discuss trust arrangements. She confirms everything is in place. Once H files, the clock starts ticking. I looked up.
DJ.
Diana Jeffries, I presume? Her composure slipped, just slightly. Client meetings are confidential, Mrs. Blackwood. So are murder plots, I countered. Yet here we are. Michael stood abruptly. I think you should leave, Miss Jeffries. Any claims against my mother's inheritance can be directed to our attorney, Gerald Hoffman. Diana gathered her documents slowly, deliberately. This isn't going away, Mrs. Blackwood. The will is valid, and Victoria Chambers is entitled to her inheritance. Your accusations won't change that. We'll see. I remained seated as Michael showed her to the door. Once she was gone, he returned, his face flushed with anger. Can you believe the nerve? He fumed. Dad leaves his mistress $12 million, and this lawyer just waltzes in here like it's normal? For some men, it is normal, I said quietly. Your father always did like contingency plans. Michael paced the room. We need to call Hoffman. If there's really another will. There is, I interrupted. Harold mentioned it in his journal. I just didn't know the details until now. You knew. He stopped, staring at me. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was hoping it wouldn't matter. I sighed, suddenly exhausted. But it seems Harold's reach extends beyond the grave. What do we do now? Now, I said, standing, we prepare for war on multiple fronts. The police investigation, Victoria's accusations, and this will challenge. I picked up my phone. I'm calling Hoffman. And then I think we need to pay Victoria a visit at the hospital. Michael's eyes widened. Is that wise? Probably not, I admitted. But I want to see for myself just how bad her condition is. Know thy enemy, Michael. As I dialed Hoffman's number, my mind raced with possibilities. Diana Jeffries and Victoria Chambers, both connected to Harold, both working against me. But were they working together? And how far would they go to secure Victoria's inheritance? The hospital visit would have to wait. Hoffman insisted we meet immediately to discuss Diana Jeffries' claims. He sounded troubled, which didn't boost my confidence. I need to change, I told Michael. We'll leave in 20 minutes. Upstairs, I locked my bedroom door and went straight to Harold's, my private safe again. I added Victoria's notebook to the collection of evidence I was amassing, then removed a small USB drive Harold had hidden inside an old pocket watch. I discovered it while going through his things after the funeral, but hadn't had the courage to look at its contents. Now, I plugged it into my laptop and waited as files appeared on the screen. Emails, photos, financial records, a digital archive of Harold's secret life. I skimmed through the emails first, feeling sick as I read exchanges between him and Victoria. Their relationship had begun 3 years earlier, not the few months I'd assumed. 3 years of lies, of deception, while I'd remained the dutiful wife. There were other women too, names I recognized, faces I'd smiled at during charity galas and dinner parties. But Victoria had been special. Victoria had been the endgame. One email caught my attention, dated just weeks before Harold's death. V. Everything is in place. DJ has the paperwork ready. Once I break the news to E, we can move quickly. The accounts are set up as discussed. Just be patient a little longer. Remember, it needs to look clean.
Ash. Clean.
As if discarding a wife of nearly 4 decades could ever be clean. I continued scrolling, looking for anything related to Diana Jeffries, when another email stopped me cold. H. The compound you asked about is ready. Untraceable once administered. Effects mimic natural heart failure. Considering E's family history, no one will question it. But you need to be certain. This isn't reversible. My hands shook as I read the words again. They hadn't just planned to divorce me. They considered killing me, making it look like the heart disease that had taken my mother and grandmother. I checked the date. 2 months before Harold's fatal heart attack. Before the heart attacks that had ultimately killed him, a cold certainty settled over me. I downloaded everything from the USB drive to a secure cloud account, then removed the drive and returned it to the safe. Evidence in case I needed it. And I was beginning to think I might. Dressed in a navy pantsuit that made me look both professional and formidable, I met Michael downstairs. He was on his phone, his expression grim. "That was Stephanie," he said as we walked to his car. "She's coming over tonight. Says she needs to talk to you in person." About. She wouldn't say, but she sounded upset. He opened the passenger door for me. "Mom, how bad is this going to get?" I buckled my seatbelt, considering my answer carefully. "Worse before it gets better. But we'll get through it." "How can you be so calm?" he asked as he slid behind the wheel. "Your husband's mistress tried to poison you. There's a secret will, and the police think you're a murderer." "Attempted murderer," I corrected. "Victoria's still alive. For now." Michael gave me a sharp look as he started the car. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "that as long as she's alive, she can make accusations. True or false." "Mom, you're scaring me a little." I patted his hand. "Good. You should be scared. We're dealing with dangerous people. You include yourself in that category?" I turned to look out the window as we drove through the gates of the estate. "I'm 60 years old, Michael. I've spent my entire adult life being underestimated. Perhaps it's time people were afraid of Elaine Blackwood." Hoffman's office was a hive of activity when we arrived. Junior associates hurried through hallways with stacks of documents, paralegals huddled around computer screens, and in the conference room, Hoffman himself stood surrounded by open law books and scattered papers. "Elaine," he said, looking up as we entered. "Thank God you're here. We've got a situation." "I'm aware," I replied, taking a seat at the table. "Diana Jeffries paid me a visit. Not just that."
He pushed a document toward me.
"The police are seeking a warrant to search your property. They found traces of digitalis in your garden and greenhouse." As I told Detective Morales, I have a gardener. I don't handle the plants myself. "Yes, well, they've questioned your gardener. Apparently, you specifically requested foxglove be planted last spring. You mentioned wanting it for its dramatic purple flowers." I frowned, trying to remember. "That's possible. I did revamp the garden after Harold's mother died. She had terrible taste in landscaping." "The timing looks suspicious," Hoffman warned. "Right around when Harold and Victoria began their relationship. Are you suggesting I planted poisonous flowers a year ago as part of an elaborate revenge plot?" I raised an eyebrow. "That would require remarkable foresight." "The prosecution could argue premeditation," Hoffman said grimly. "That you suspected Harold's affair and began planning even then." Michael leaned forward. "This is ridiculous. Mom didn't poison anyone." "I agree it seems far-fetched," Hoffman acknowledged. "But we need to address the will issue first. If Victoria dies, her claim dies with her," I finished. "Convenient for me, legally speaking. Exactly why we need to be extremely careful." Hoffman shuffled through more papers. "Now, regarding Diana Jeffries. I've looked into her background. She specializes in high-asset divorces, usually representing the wealthier spouse. Harold hired her 8 months ago, but kept it quiet. He was planning his exit, I said flatly, setting up his new life with Victoria while I remained in the dark. There's more. Hoffman looked uncomfortable. The will she mentioned is real. I've confirmed it with the court. Harold filed it secretly, using Jeffries instead of me because he knew I would have objected to the terms. Which are complicated, but essentially, he left the bulk of his personal assets, not the company, but investments, properties, art collections, and a trust. Victoria is the primary beneficiary, but there are others. He hesitated, including Diana Jeffries herself. I sat back, the pieces clicking into place. They were working together. Diana helps Harold cut me out of the will, and she gets a piece of the pie. Exactly, Hoffman confirmed. And with Harold gone, they're moving to secure those assets before your lottery winnings complicate matters. Can they do that? Michael asked. Just take what should rightfully be Mom's. Maybe. Hoffman looked grim. The will is properly executed. We could challenge it on grounds that Harold wasn't of sound mind or that Victoria exerted undue influence, but those are difficult cases to win. What about the emails? I asked. I found communications suggesting Victoria and Harold may have been planning something more sinister than divorce. Both men stared at me. What kind of communications? Hoffman asked carefully. I explained about the USB drive, the emails discussing an untraceable compound that mimicked heart failure. It sounds like they may have been plotting to kill me, I concluded. Make it look like I died of the same heart condition that took my mother.
Jesus Christ, Michael whispered.
Dad wouldn't, he couldn't. The emails suggest otherwise, I said gently.
I'm sorry, Michael.
Hoffman was already making notes. This changes everything. If we can prove they were conspiring to murder you, Victoria's claim on the estate would be invalidated under the Slayer statute. The what? Michael asked. It's a legal principle that prevents killers from inheriting from their victims, Hoffman explained. If Victoria was planning to murder your mother to get Harold's money, she can't benefit from the will. But she didn't succeed, I pointed out. I'm still very much alive. Conspiracy to commit murder is still a crime, Hoffman countered. And it would certainly constitute the kind of undue influence that could invalidate the will. A spark of hope ignited inside me. So, we turned the tables. Instead of me defending against accusations of poisoning Victoria, we accuse her of plotting to murder me. It's risky, Hoffman warned. We'd need solid evidence. The emails are a start, but we'd need more. And there's still the matter of what happened at your party. One battle at a time, I said firmly. For now, let's focus on protecting my assets from Victoria and Diana Jeffries. Hoffman nodded. I'll file for an emergency injunction to freeze the estate until these matters are resolved. And I'll begin preparing our challenge to the will. Good. I stood, smoothing my jacket. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think it's time I paid Victoria a visit at the hospital. Elaine, Hoffman said sharply. That is an extraordinarily bad idea. Perhaps, I conceded. But I need to see her. Look her in the eyes. At least let me come with you, Michael insisted. I shook my head.
No.
This is between Victoria and me. Then I'm calling Detective Morales to meet you there, Hoffman said. If you're determined to do this, at least have a witness. I considered arguing, then nodded.
Fine. Call him.
Tell him I'm ready to make a statement about what really happened that night. As I left Hoffman's office, my phone rang. Stephanie. Mom, she said without preamble. I need to talk to you. It's about Dad and that woman. I'm heading to the hospital now, I told her. To see Victoria. A pause. I'm coming too. Stephanie, I don't think. It wasn't a request, Mom. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could argue further. I sighed, resigning myself to having an audience for what I'd hoped would be a private confrontation. Still, perhaps having my daughter present would be useful. Victoria would be less likely to make a scene. The hospital room was easy to find. Just look for the police officer stationed outside the door. Detective Morales was already there, looking surprised to see me. Mrs. Blackwood, he said, stepping forward. I didn't expect you to actually come. I always keep my promises, detective. I nodded toward the door. Is she awake? In and out, he replied cautiously. The doctors say the poison did significant damage to her kidneys. She may need dialysis. How tragic, I murmured. May I see her? I'm not sure that's appropriate, given the circumstances. The circumstances being that she tried to poison me, and now I'm concerned about her welfare? I raised an eyebrow. Or are you still clinging to the theory that I somehow orchestrated this entire scenario? Morales looked uncomfortable. New evidence has emerged that complicates the picture. Oh, I feigned surprise. Do tell. We found communications between Miss Chambers and your late husband that suggest they may have been planning something against you. How shocking, I said dryly. I never would have guessed. Before Morales could respond, Stephanie appeared at the end of the hallway, walking briskly toward us. My daughter, tall, elegant, so much like me at her age, but with a confidence I'd only found in my 6th decade. Mom, she said, embracing me briefly before turning to Morales. Detective, I'm Stephanie Lewis, Elaine Blackwood's daughter. I understand you've been investigating the incident at my mother's party. Morales nodded. That's correct, Mrs. Lewis. Then you should know I have information relevant to your case. Stephanie's voice was firm, professional, the voice she used in the boardroom of the charitable foundation she ran. About Victoria Chambers and my father. Morales looked intrigued. What kind of information? Perhaps we should discuss this privately, she suggested, glancing at the uniformed officer. My office later today? Morales offered. That would be fine. Stephanie turned to me. Are you going in to see her? If the detective permits it, I replied. Morales hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, and I'll be right outside. Thank you. I squeezed Stephanie's hand. Wait here. This won't take long. Victoria's hospital room was dim, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. Machines beeped softly, monitoring her vital signs. She lay propped against pillows, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. The glamorous seductress was gone, replaced by a pale, drawn woman with tubes snaking from her arms. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached the bed, widening when she recognized me. You, she whispered, her voice raspy. Me, I agreed, taking the chair beside her. Not dead, as you can see. Fear flickered across her face. What do you want? Just checking on your progress, I said pleasantly. The doctors seem concerned about your kidneys. Such a shame. You did this to me, she hissed, struggling to sit up straighter. You switched the glasses. Did I? I tilted my head. That's an interesting theory. Almost as interesting as the emails I found discussing an untraceable poison that mimics heart failure. The one you and Harold were planning to use on me. All color drained from her already pale face. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I leaned closer. Harold kept records, Victoria. Emails, messages, plans. He was meticulous that way, something you apparently have in common, judging by your notebook. You can't prove anything, she said, but her voice trembled. I don't need to prove that you and Harold planned to kill me, I replied calmly. I just need to establish reasonable doubt about what happened at my party. And your own detailed records of your business arrangements with my husband are quite helpful in that regard. Victoria's monitor beeped faster as her heart rate increased. What do you want from me? I want you to drop any claims against my husband's estate, I said simply. Sign a statement acknowledging that you have no right to his assets. Withdraw from the will contest. She laughed, a harsh sound that dissolved into coughing. Why would I do that? That money is mine, Harold promised. Harold is dead, I reminded her. And you're in a precarious position, physically and legally. Are you threatening me? Her eyes narrowed. Not at all. I'm offering you a choice. I stood, smoothing my skirt. Sign away your claims, and I'll forget about the emails plotting my murder. Continue pursuing Harold's money, and I'll make sure every sordid detail of your relationship becomes public record. You wouldn't, she whispered. It would destroy Harold's reputation. Your children would know everything. They already do, I said softly. And they're standing with me. Are you really prepared to fight us all, Victoria? In your condition? She turned her face away, tears slipping down her cheeks. Not from remorse, I suspected, but from thwarted ambition. I'll have my attorney draw up the paperwork, I continued. You can sign it tomorrow, assuming your health permits. As I reached the door, she spoke again, her voice barely audible. You think you've won, don't you? I paused, hand on the doorknob. This isn't about winning, Victoria. It's about justice. Justice, she repeated with a bitter laugh. You have no idea what's coming, Elaine. No idea at all. I left without responding, the chill of her words following me into the hallway. Stephanie and Morales looked up expectantly as I emerged. Everything all right? Morales asked, studying my face. Perfectly fine, I assured him. Ms. Chambers and I had a productive conversation. About, he pressed. Personal matters, I replied vaguely. Now, I believe my daughter has information for you, Detective. Shall we proceed to your office? Morales looked like he wanted to ask more questions, but nodded reluctantly. My car is downstairs. You can follow me to the station. As we walked toward the elevator, Stephanie leaned close. What did she say to you? Nothing of consequence, I lied. Just empty threats from a desperate woman. But Victoria's words echoed in my mind. You have no idea what's coming. What did she mean? What else could possibly be waiting in the wings of this tragedy? At the police station, Stephanie revealed what she'd been holding back, evidence that Victoria had approached her 6 months earlier, before Harold's death, with a bizarre proposal. She claimed to be pregnant with Dad's child. Stephanie told Morales, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. Said she needed money for medical expenses. When I refused, she threatened to go public with the affair. Morales made notes. Did you tell your mother about this? No, Stephanie admitted, glancing at me apologetically. I paid her $20,000 to keep quiet. I was trying to protect Mom from the scandal. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently.
Oh, darling.
You shouldn't have had to deal with that alone. Was Miss Chambers actually pregnant? Morales asked. Stephanie shook her head. I don't think so. When I insisted on proof before paying, she produced medical records that looked suspicious. I had a friend who's a doctor review them discreetly. He said they appeared forged. So she was extorting you, Morales concluded. Yes, Stephanie confirmed. And I believe she was planning to do the same to my brother. Create some story, some claim, and use it to extract money. Did you confront her about the fake records?
No.
I just paid her and told her never to contact me again. Stephanie's jaw tightened. I should have exposed her then. Maybe none of this would have happened. You were protecting your family, I said softly. Never apologize for that. Morales finished his notes and looked up. This establishes a pattern of behavior that certainly complicates Miss Chambers' claims against your mother. That was my hope, Stephanie said bluntly. Victoria Chambers is a con artist who targeted my father and my family. Whatever happened at that party, she was not an innocent victim. As we left the police station, I felt a shift in the wind. Victoria's facade was cracking. The poor, poisoned mistress narrative was giving way to a more complex truth. But her final warning still troubled me. Stephanie, I said as we walked to our cars, is there anything else you haven't told me? About Victoria or your father? She hesitated, then sighed. There is one thing. Dad changed his will a month before he died. He told me about it, said he was making provisions for the future. I assumed he meant for us, for me and Michael and the grandchildren. But now you think differently, I guessed. After meeting Victoria? Yes. She looked troubled. There's something else. When Dad died, I found a key in his desk. A safe deposit box key. My heart raced. Did you open it? No, she admitted. I was going to, but then you won the lottery, and everything seemed settled. I thought whatever was in that box could stay buried with him. Stephanie reached into her purse and pulled out a small brass key. But now I think we need to see what's inside. I took the key, turning it over in my palm. Another secret, another piece of Harold's elaborate puzzle. Do you know which bank? First National Downtown. Box 4721. We'll go first thing tomorrow, I decided, pocketing the key. Together. Stephanie nodded, then gave me a searching look. Mom, at the party, what really happened between you and Victoria? I considered my answer carefully. My daughter deserved the truth, but how much truth could she handle? How much could I admit without implicating myself? Victoria came to destroy me, I said finally. She didn't succeed. Did you know? About the poison? I suspected she might try something, I admitted. She had that look, the look of someone with nothing to lose and everything to gain. So you switched glasses, Stephanie concluded. Self-defense. I neither confirmed nor denied it, just kissed her cheek. Get some rest, darling. Tomorrow will be a long day. Back at the estate, I found Michael in the study, poring over documents from Hoffman's office. He looked up as I entered, his face lined with exhaustion. Stephanie called, he said. Told me about the safe deposit box. Why didn't Dad ever mention it to me? Because you were the good son, I replied, pouring myself a scotch. The one who followed all his rules, walked in his footsteps. Stephanie was always more independent. Maybe he trusted her more with his secrets. Michael winced at that. What do you think we'll find? I don't know, I admitted. But I doubt it will be pleasant. Nothing about this is pleasant. He gestured to the papers spread across the desk. Hoffman sent over copies of Dad's secret will. It's worse than we thought. How so? The trust for Victoria is just the beginning. There are provisions for other women, references to offshore accounts, even directions for selling company assets without shareholder approval. Michael ran a hand through his hair. It's like he was living a completely different life than the one we knew. He was, I said simply, sinking into a chair. The question is, how deep does it go? And who else was involved? Diana Jeffries, for one. Michael held up a document. She's named as the executor of the trust, and she gets a 5% commission on all assets transferred, potentially millions. Convenient, I murmured. Any mention of Rebecca Chambers? Michael frowned. Victoria's sister? No, why? I didn't answer immediately, considering the implications. Rebecca had seemed genuinely distraught about her sister's actions, but could it have been an act? Another player in this elaborate con? Just wondering, I said finally. She visited me today, claiming to be concerned about Victoria's behavior. You think she's involved? I think everyone connected to Harold and Victoria deserves scrutiny. I sipped my scotch, feeling the burn down my throat. Trust no one, Michael. That's the lesson I'm learning rather late in life. He looked pained. Even family? Family most of all. I replied softly. We're the ones with the most to lose. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 11. Michael gathered the documents, stacking them neatly. I'm staying here tonight. The guest room okay? Of course. I smiled at my son. So like his father in appearance, but with a moral center Harold had lacked. I'm glad you're here. After he left for bed, I returned to the safe and retrieved both Harold's journal and Victoria's notebook. Side by side, they told a damning story. A calculated plan to secure Harold's wealth, eliminate me if necessary, and build a new life on the ashes of my old one. But something still didn't add up. If Harold and Victoria had been planning my death, why had he died first? Heart attack seemed too convenient, too opportune. Unless, the thought struck me like lightning. I flipped through Victoria's notebook, searching for entries around the time of Harold's death. There, the week before his fatal heart attack. H being difficult about the divorce timeline. Says he needs more time to arrange finances. More excuses. Getting tired of waiting. Might need to accelerate things. And then the day after his death. Tragic news about H. Not what we planned, but perhaps better this way. Now to ensure the will stands. DJ says everything is in order. My hands trembled as I set down the notebook. Had Victoria killed Harold? Used the same poison they'd planned for me? It would explain his sudden decline, the series of heart attacks that baffled his doctors despite his seemingly stable condition. I needed proof, and I needed to understand the full scope of their plan before I could dismantle it. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake, reviewing every interaction with Harold in his final weeks, every detail I could remember about Victoria at the funeral. She hadn't attended, I realized, too risky to be seen. Every strange comment or unexplained absence. By dawn, I had a theory, but no evidence. Not yet. Stephanie arrived early, dressed in a conservative suit that reminded me painfully of myself at her age, armored for battle in tailored wool and sensible heels. "Ready?" she asked, accepting the coffee Rosa offered. "As I'll ever be," I replied, gathering my purse. "Michael's coming too. He's just getting dressed." The drive downtown was tense, none of us speaking much. The bank opened at 9. We arrived at 8:50, waiting in the lobby like anxious supplicants before the altar of Harold's final secrets. The manager recognized me immediately. Elaine Blackwood, widow of Harold, recent lottery winner. He ushered us to the vault area with obsequious efficiency. "Mrs. Blackwood, we're honored to have you visit our humble institution," he gushed. "If there's anything at all I can do to make your experience more comfortable." "Just the safe deposit box," I said firmly. 4,721. He nodded, leading us to a private viewing room before retrieving the box, larger than I'd expected, the kind used for significant documents or valuables. He placed it on the table and discreetly withdrew, closing the door behind him. We stared at the steel box for a long moment, none of us moving to open it. "Whatever's in there," Michael said finally, "we face it together." I nodded, inserting the key and turning it with a soft click. The lid lifted easily, revealing neat stacks of documents, several USB drives, and a small velvet pouch. Stephanie reached for the pouch while Michael began examining the papers. I took one of the USB drives, turning it over in my hand. "Oh my God," Stephanie whispered, emptying the pouch onto the table. A diamond ring tumbled out, enormous, ostentatious, and unmistakably an engagement ring. He was going to propose to her. Michael looked up from the documents, his face pale. "It's worse than that. These are forged birth certificates, social security cards, passports." He was planning to disappear. Create a new identity. What? I grabbed one of the passports, flipping it open to see Harold's face next to the name James Wickham. That's impossible. He wouldn't abandon the company, his position. The company was failing, Michael said quietly, holding up financial statements. "These show massive debt, hidden losses, accounts being emptied. Dad was running a shell game for years, moving money around to hide the fact that Blackwood Enterprises was basically insolvent." The room seemed to tilt around me. The empire Harold had built, the success he'd lorded over everyone, the wealth he'd used to control us all, it had been a mirage. "So the divorce," I said slowly, "wasn't just about Victoria. It was about escaping before everything collapsed. And avoiding the fallout," Stephanie added, examining more documents. "Look at this, a signed confession, sealed, admitting to embezzlement and fraud. Dad was setting up a fall guy, Peter Chambers." "Chambers?" I repeated. "Any relation to Victoria?" Stephanie checked the document. "It says here he's her uncle, CFO of Blackwood Enterprises, West Coast Division." The pieces clicked together in my mind, a family operation. Victoria seduces Harold, gains his trust, helps him plan his escape from a failing business and a stale marriage. Meanwhile, her uncle is positioned to take the blame when the house of cards finally collapses. "But something went wrong," I murmured. "Harold died before they could execute the plan. Or someone accelerated the timeline," Michael suggested, voicing my own suspicions. We continued sorting through the contents of the box, each discovery more damning than the last. Offshore account numbers. Property deeds for a villa in the Cayman Islands under the Wickham alias. A detailed exit strategy, time to the day. And then, at the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope with my name written in Harold's precise handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it, unfolding the single sheet of expensive stationery inside. "Elaine, if you're reading this, Something has gone wrong. My plan was never for you to discover any of this. You were supposed to be left with a shell of Blackwood Enterprises, dealing with the creditors and investigators while I started fresh elsewhere. I won't apologize. Our marriage died years ago, remaining only as a convenient business arrangement. You played your part well, the devoted corporate wife, turning a blind eye to my indiscretions in exchange for the lifestyle you enjoyed. Victoria understands me in ways you never could. She's ambitious, unencumbered by conventional morality. Together, we plan to rebuild what I lost, without the mistakes of the past. By now you've likely discovered the company's true financial state. The bankruptcy will be public soon enough. The house, the cars, the art collection, all mortgaged to keep up appearances. Your social standing, your country club memberships, your charity board positions, all gone. Consider this my final gift to you. The truth. Something I never gave you in life. Harold. I read the letter twice, each word a knife twisting in my heart. Not because I still loved him, that emotion had withered years ago, but because I'd been such a fool. I'd built my life around a lie, sacrificed my dreams and ambitions for a man who saw me as nothing more than a convenient accessory. Mom, Stephanie's voice broke through my thoughts. What does it say? Wordlessly, I handed her the letter. She read it quickly, her expression hardening with each line. When she finished, she passed it to Michael without comment. That bastard, he whispered when he'd read it. That absolute bastard. He was going to leave you with nothing, Stephanie said, her voice shaking with anger. Leave us all to deal with his mess while he ran off with that woman. But he didn't get the chance, I said, my mind racing ahead. He died first. And now Victoria is trying to salvage what she can of the plan through the will. We need to call Hoffman, Michael decided, gathering the documents. This changes everything. Not yet, I cautioned, holding up a hand. First, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. These papers suggest Blackwood Enterprises is on the verge of collapse, but is that true? Or was that part of Harold's deception too? Michael frowned. What do you mean? Your father was a liar, I said simply. He lied to me, to you, to everyone. What if the company isn't failing? What if he created these documents to justify abandoning us? That would mean... Stephanie's eyes widened. The company could still be valuable. And he was planning to loot it before disappearing. Exactly. I began carefully repacking the box. Before we do anything, we need to verify the company's true financial state. Michael, you have access to the books. I need you to do a deep dive, every account, every transaction, every asset. That could take days, he protested. Then you'd better start now. I closed the box with a decisive click. Stephanie, I need you to look into Peter Chambers. Find out everything you can about his connection to Victoria and his role at the company. What are you going to do? She asked. I stood, smoothing my skirt. I'm going to pay another visit to Victoria. But first, I think it's time I had a chat with Detective Morales about a possible murder, Harold's. We left the bank with copies of the most damning documents, leaving the originals secured in the safe deposit box. Evidence, in case we needed it for the legal battles ahead. At the police station, Detective Morales listened skeptically to my theory that Victoria might have poisoned Harold to accelerate their plan, or because he was getting cold feet. Mrs. Blackwood, he said when I'd finished, these are serious allegations. Do you have any actual evidence that your husband was poisoned? Not yet, I admitted. But his death was suspiciously convenient, don't you think? Just as he was planning to leave the country with his mistress, abandon his company, and start a new life. Convenient for whom? Morales countered. From what you've told me, his death derailed their entire plan. Unless Victoria decided he was more valuable dead than alive, I suggested. The will Harold signed would have given her millions without having to run away with him. Maybe she got tired of waiting, or maybe she realized he might change his mind. Morales made notes, his expression noncommittal. We can request an exhumation and toxicology screening, but we need more than speculation to justify that. What about the emails? I reminded him. The ones discussing an untraceable poison that mimics heart failure? Those same emails could be used to implicate you in Victoria's poisoning, he pointed out, since you admitted you found them before your party. I smiled thinly. Detective, if I had wanted to kill Victoria Chambers, I would have chosen a more reliable method than switching champagne glasses at a party with 200 witnesses. He didn't smile back. Nevertheless, we'll look into your husband's death more closely. In the meantime, I suggest you avoid further contact with Miss Chambers. Of course, I lied smoothly. I wouldn't dream of interfering with your investigation. As I left the station, my phone rang. Hoffman. Elaine, he said without preamble. We have a problem. Diana Jeffries is filed for an emergency hearing tomorrow morning. She's asking the court to freeze all your assets, including the lottery winnings, pending resolution of the will contest. Can she do that? I asked, sliding into my car.
Technically, yes.
She's arguing that you're spending down assets that may rightfully belong to the trust beneficiaries. He sounded grim. Judge Harmon is hearing the case. He's conservative, by the book. We need to be prepared. I'll be there, I promised. And, Gerald? Bring everything we have on Victoria Chambers. Every scrap of evidence about her relationship with Harold, her past cons, everything. Already compiling it, he assured me. But, Elaine, this is going to get ugly. It already is, I replied, starting the car. I'll see you in court tomorrow. Instead of going home, I drove straight to the hospital. Victoria might be Morales' case, but I had questions that couldn't wait for official channels. The officer outside her room was different from yesterday, younger, less experienced looking.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, officer, I said, approaching with confidence. I'm Elaine Blackwood, Victoria's sister-in-law. Detective Morales asked me to check on her condition for his report. The young officer looked uncertain. I wasn't informed. It was a last-minute request, I explained smoothly. He's tied up with another case. You can call him if you'd like, but he seemed quite busy. No, that's okay, Mrs. Blackwood. Just, don't stay too long. He stepped aside, allowing me to enter. Victoria was awake, staring listlessly at a muted television. She turned as I entered, her face registering first surprise, then wary calculation. Back so soon? She asked, her voice stronger than yesterday. Come to gloat some more? Actually, I said, taking the chair beside her bed. I came to discuss Harold's death. Specifically, how you caused it. She blinked, momentarily thrown off guard. What are you talking about? The digitalis, Victoria. The same poison you tried to use on me. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Except with Harold, it worked. 3 heart attacks in 2 weeks. Very convenient timing, considering he was getting cold feet about your little escape plan. Her face paled. You're insane. Am I? We found the safe deposit box. I watched her eyes widen. All those carefully laid plans, the false identities, the offshore accounts, the villa in the Caymans. Harold was quite thorough. I don't know what you're talking about, she insisted, but her heart monitor betrayed her, beeping faster. You killed him, didn't you? When he started having second thoughts, or when you realized you could get more from his will than by running away with him. I kept my voice conversational, as if discussing the weather. The company was failing, but he had personal assets tucked away. Assets you knew about because you helped him hide them. Get out, she hissed, reaching for the call button. I caught her wrist. Not until you hear my offer. She froze, calculating again. What offer? Confess to poisoning Harold, I said simply. Sign a statement admitting you killed him because he was planning to abandon you. In return, I'll drop any challenge to your claim on his estate. You'd let me have the money? Disbelief colored her voice. What's left of it? I clarified. A few million, perhaps. Far less than you hoped for, but more than you deserve. And if I refuse? Then I'll make sure you're investigated for Harold's murder. I'll provide the police with the emails about the untraceable poison, your notebook detailing your frustration with his timeline, the safe deposit box contents showing your planned escape. I smiled coldly. And I'll personally make sure you never see a penny of Harold's estate. Victoria studied me, her expression shifting from fear to grudging respect. You're more like him than you realize, Elaine. Just as ruthless when cornered. I'll take that as a compliment, I replied, standing. Think about my offer. You have until tomorrow morning. As I turned to leave, she called after me. It wasn't supposed to be like this, you know. He promised me everything would be clean, simple. No loose ends. I paused at the door. Harold was never good at keeping promises, Victoria. That's something you and I have in common. We both believed him when we shouldn't have. Outside, I nodded to the young officer and walked briskly to the elevator, heart pounding. I had no intention of letting Victoria have any of Harold's money, of course. The offer was merely bait, a way to get her to admit to killing him. Once I had her confession, I'd take it straight to Morales. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Found something big. Meet me at the office. The Blackwood Enterprises headquarters occupied the top 5 floors of a gleaming downtown tower. Harold's pride and joy, the physical manifestation of his success. I hadn't been there since his death, preferring to let Michael handle the business aspects of the estate. Security recognized me, of course. Mrs. Blackwood, what a pleasure to see you again. Mr. Michael is waiting in the executive suite. I nodded my thanks and took the private elevator to the top floor. Harold's, now Michael's, office commanded a panoramic view of the city, the furniture all sleek leather and polished mahogany. Power disguised as taste. Michael wasn't alone. A small, nervous-looking man in an ill-fitting suit sat across from him, clutching a leather portfolio like a shield. Mom, Michael said, rising as I entered. This is Edward Phelps, our senior accountant. He's been doing the deep dive we discussed. Mrs. Blackwood, Phelps nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. I'm not sure how to say this. Directly is usually best, I suggested, taking a seat. Yes, well. He opened his portfolio, revealing stacks of spreadsheets. The company isn't failing. Quite the opposite, in fact. Blackwood Enterprises is extremely solvent, with liquid assets exceeding $200 million. I stared at him, then at Michael. But Harold's documents. Fabricated, Michael confirmed grimly. Dad created a paper trail suggesting financial ruin, but it was all smoke and mirrors. He was setting up a narrative to explain his disappearance and the company's supposed collapse. Meanwhile, Phelps continued, he was quietly transferring funds to offshore accounts. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger regulatory oversight, but consistent. Over the past year, approximately $40 million has been relocated. To accounts only he could access, I guessed. Precisely. Phelps pushed a document toward me. This is the most recent transfer, 2 days before his death. $10 million to a Cayman Islands account under the name James Wickham. The alias from the safe deposit box. Everything was falling into place. So, Harold wasn't running from a failing business, I said slowly. He was looting a successful one before disappearing. Yes, ma'am. Phelps looked profoundly uncomfortable. And there's more. These transfers were authorized by dual signatures, Mr. Blackwood's and the CFO of our West Coast division. Peter Chambers, I said, the final piece clicking into place. Victoria's uncle. Michael nodded. A family operation, just like you suspected. Victoria seduces Dad, convinces him to start fresh with her, while her uncle helps him siphon money from the company. They probably planned to split it once they were safely away. But Harold died. I mused, leaving Victoria and Peter with access to the offshore accounts, but unable to disappear as planned because of the will complications. Exactly. Michael looked troubled. Mom, this goes beyond fraud. This is criminal conspiracy on a massive scale. And potentially murder, I added. If Victoria did poison Harold, either because he was having second thoughts or because she decided his death was more profitable than his disappearance. Phelps cleared his throat nervously. Should I be hearing this? Mr. Phelps, I said firmly, what you've uncovered may help bring justice for my husband's death and save this company from further theft. Your discretion is appreciated, but your honesty is essential. He nodded, visibly relieved to have clear direction. We need to move quickly, Michael said. If Peter Chambers realizes we're onto the scheme, he could transfer the remaining offshore funds beyond our reach. And Victoria's court hearing is tomorrow morning, I added. Diana Jeffries will be fighting to get her hands on as much of the estate as possible. Diana Jeffries, Phelps repeated, frowning. That name is familiar. Harold's personal attorney, I explained. Handling his divorce and new will. No, it's more than that. Phelps shuffled through his papers. Here, she's listed as a signatory on one of the smaller offshore accounts, a Liechtenstein entity called Athena Holdings. Michael and I exchanged glances. So Diana was in on it too, he said slowly. Part of the conspiracy. Which explains why she's fighting so hard for Victoria's claim, I concluded. She's not just earning a fee. She's protecting her own interests. A plan began forming in my mind, complex, risky, but potentially devastating to our enemies if executed properly. Michael, I said, standing abruptly, I need you to freeze those offshore accounts immediately. Use whatever legal means necessary, fraud alerts, regulatory holds, anything. I'll try, but without court orders. Then get them, I insisted. Call Judge Warren. He owes your father a favor. Tell him it's an emergency involving potential terrorist financing if you have to, but get those accounts locked down. What are you going to do? He asked as I gathered my purse. I'm going to visit Rebecca Chambers, I replied. Victoria's sister might be more involved than she let on, especially if this is truly a family operation. Be careful, Michael warned. These people have already tried to kill you once. Don't worry about me, I assured him with a confidence I didn't entirely feel. I've learned from the best, Harold himself. Never show your hand until you're ready to play it. As I left the Blackwood building, I called Stephanie to update her on our discoveries. She'd been digging into Peter Chambers' background and had her own revelations to share. He's not really their uncle, she told me. Victoria and Rebecca aren't even sisters, not biologically anyway. They were foster children taken in by the same family in Chicago. Peter was their foster father's brother. They've been running cons together for years. Cons like seducing wealthy men and bleeding them dry, I guessed.
Exactly.
I found 3 similar cases in the last decade. Rich men who either died suddenly or lost everything in business failures after becoming involved with Victoria. Each time, Rebecca showed up as the concerned sister, Peter as the helpful business associate. And now they're working with Diana Jeffries, I added, pulling into traffic. A 4-person con targeting both Harold and Blackwood Enterprises. What's the play, Mom? Stephanie asked. How do we stop them? Divide and conquer, I replied. Each one has a weakness we can exploit. Victoria's is greed. She'll betray the others if she thinks she can get more money that way. Rebecca's is her conscience. She seemed genuinely uncomfortable with Victoria's methods. Peter's is his visibility. As CFO, he's exposed to regulatory scrutiny. And Diana's is her professional reputation. So we turn them against each other, Stephanie concluded. Precisely. Starting with Rebecca. Where can I find her? She's staying at the Westmont Hotel downtown. Room 712. Perfect. I'll head there now. I paused, then added. Stephanie, I want you to go to the hospital. Stay out of sight, but watch Victoria's room. If anyone visits her, especially Diana or Peter, I want to know immediately. Consider it done, she agreed. Be careful, Mom. These people are dangerous. So am I replied. They just don't know it yet. The Westmont was a mid-range business hotel, comfortable but unremarkable, the kind of place that didn't ask too many questions as long as your credit card cleared. I found room 712 easily and knocked firmly. Rebecca opened the door cautiously, her eyes widening when she saw me. Mrs. Blackwood, how did you? May I come in? I asked pleasantly. I think we need to continue our conversation from yesterday. She hesitated, then stepped back, allowing me to enter. The room was neat but lived in, suitcases open on the luggage rack, laptop on the desk surrounded by papers. I just came from seeing Victoria, I said, taking the room's single armchair without waiting for an invitation. She's improving. The doctors are more optimistic about her kidneys. That's Good news, Rebecca replied cautiously, perching on the edge of the bed. But somehow I doubt you came here to update me on my sister's condition. No, I agreed. I came to talk about Peter Chambers' offshore accounts and the conspiracy to defraud Blackwood Enterprises of approximately $40 million. All color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. Please, I sighed, let's not waste each other's time. I know everything, Rebecca. Or should I call you Sarah Miller? That was your name during the Danforth Con in Seattle, wasn't it? She sank further onto the bed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. How did you? I have resources, I said simply. What I don't have is time. So, here's the situation. Victoria poisoned my husband after he started having second thoughts about your scheme. Now she's in the hospital because she tried the same poison on me and failed. Peter is still at large, with access to millions in stolen funds. And Diana Jeffries is trying to use the legal system to get control of the rest of the estate. I didn't know about Harold's death, Rebecca said quickly. I swear I wasn't part of that. But you were part of the rest, I pressed. The seduction, the fraud, the planned disappearance. She looked away. I handled background details. Paperwork, identities, travel arrangements. I never directly. Spare me, I interrupted. You're as guilty as the rest. The only question is whether you're smart enough to save yourself. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? I'm offering you a deal, I said calmly. Testify against Victoria, Peter, and Diana. Tell the authorities everything, the plan, the offshore accounts, the forged documents, all of it. In return, I'll ask the prosecutor for leniency in your case. You want me to betray my sister? Her voice was barely a whisper. The sister who's been using you as an accessory to fraud and possibly murder? I raised an eyebrow. The sister who is planning to disappear with millions, leaving you to face the consequences when everything fell apart. What are you talking about? I reached into my purse and removed a copy of one of the documents from the safe deposit box, the travel arrangements for James and Elizabeth Whitcomb to the Cayman Islands. 2 tickets, not 3. No provisions for Rebecca to join them. They were going to abandon you, I said gently, handing her the paper. Once they had the money safely transferred, you would have become a liability. Someone who knew too much. She stared at the document, her hands trembling. This could be fake. You could have created this to turn me against them. You know I didn't, I replied. Deep down, you've always known Victoria was using you. Just like she used Harold. Just like she's used every man she's targeted. Rebecca was silent for a long moment, visibly struggling with her thoughts. Finally, she looked up, her eyes clear and determined. What exactly do you want me to do? I smiled. 1 down, 3 to go. First, I said, call Peter. Tell him Victoria is conscious and asking for him. That she's worried about the accounts and needs reassurance. He won't come, Rebecca warned. He's too cautious. He will if you tell him I've been asking questions about offshore transfers. That Victoria thinks I'm onto something, and they need to accelerate their timeline. She nodded slowly. And then you call Detective Morales. Tell him everything. The cons, the fraud, your suspicions about Harold's death. Emphasize that you're coming forward voluntarily, that you want to make amends. He'll arrest me, she protested. Eventually, yes, I acknowledged. But cooperation counts for a lot in our justice system. And I'll make sure you have the best defense attorney money can buy. Why would you do that? She asked suspiciously. Because I need your testimony to bring down the others, I said simply. And because you're the only one who's shown a hint of remorse. Rebecca considered this, then nodded again.
All right.
I'll do it. But I want immunity in writing. That's not mine to give, I reminded her. But I'll speak to the district attorney personally. Your full cooperation now will go a long way toward a favorable deal later. As Rebecca made the call to Peter, I texted Stephanie. Rebecca on board. Watch for Peter at hospital. Alert Morales when he arrives. Phase 1 of my plan was underway. By this time tomorrow, Peter Chambers would be in custody, the offshore accounts frozen, and Victoria's claim on Harold's estate in tatters. But first, We had to survive Diana Jeffries and her emergency hearing in the morning. I left Rebecca with instructions to meet Morales at the police station in 2 hours, giving her time to gather any evidence she had against her co-conspirators. Whether she would actually show up or flee remained to be seen, but I'd planted the seeds of doubt. The prospect of being the fall guy while Victoria and Peter enjoyed millions would hopefully be enough to secure her cooperation. Back at the estate, I found Hoffman waiting in the study, surrounded by documents and legal briefs. "You've been busy," he observed as I entered. "Michael called to brief me on the offshore accounts." "Quite a development." "More than you know," I replied, pouring us both a drink. "Rebecca Chambers is turning state's evidence against the others. Peter should be arrested within hours when he visits Victoria at the hospital." Hoffman whistled low. "Impressive. But Diana Jeffries is still a problem. Judge Harmon is notoriously sympathetic to claims of spousal disinheritance." "Then we need to change the narrative," I said, handing him his scotch. "Tomorrow's hearing isn't about a poor, helpless mistress seeking her rightful inheritance. It's about a criminal conspiracy to defraud Blackwood Enterprises and possibly murder its CEO." "That's a bold strategy," Hoffman warned. "Without arrests or formal charges, making such accusations in court could be considered defamatory." "Then we need to ensure there are arrests before the hearing," I concluded. "What time are we scheduled?" 10 a.m. He checked his watch. 15 hours from now." "Plenty of time," I said with more confidence than I felt. "Stephanie is watching Victoria's room. As soon as Peter shows up, Morales will be notified." "And if he doesn't show up?" Hoffman asked. "He will," I assured him. Greed is a powerful motivator. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Judge Warren signed emergency freeze order. Accounts locked down. I showed the message to Hoffman, who nodded approvingly. "Good. That cuts off their escape route. But we still need to connect Diana Jeffries directly to the fraud." "Check her law firm records," I suggested. "Look for any connections to past cases involving Victoria or Peter. If this is their standard con, she may have represented other victims." "I'll put my investigator on it immediately," Hoffman promised, already typing on his phone. "In the meantime, we should prepare for tomorrow as if we don't have this evidence. Judge Harmon will focus on the will's validity, not criminal allegations." We spend the next few hours preparing our legal strategy, reviewing precedents, and building arguments against Victoria's claim on Harold's estate. By midnight, we had a solid case, not ironclad, but enough to create reasonable doubt about Harold's intentions. As Hoffman was leaving, another text came through from Stephanie. "Peter just arrived at hospital. Morales notified. Standing by." "It's happening," I told Hoffman. Peter took the bait. "I'll call you as soon as we have confirmation of an arrest," he promised. "Try to get some rest, Elaine. Tomorrow will be challenging regardless of tonight's developments." Rest, however, proved elusive. I paced the study, nursing a scotch, mentally rehearsing the coming confrontation. Diana Jeffries was a formidable opponent, smart, calculating, with the law ostensibly on her side. But she had one critical weakness: her own complicity in the fraud. If I could expose that in court, her case would collapse. My phone rang just after 1 a.m. Detective Morales. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said, his voice clipped. "We've just arrested Peter Chambers at the hospital. He was attempting to access Ms. Chambers' room with falsified medical credentials." "I see," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "May I ask why you're calling me with this information?" "Because he was carrying a syringe containing what appears to be digitalis, the same compound found in Ms. Chambers' system after your party." Morales paused meaningfully. It seemed someone wanted to ensure she didn't regain consciousness. A chill ran through me. "Are you suggesting he was trying to kill her?" "That's our working theory," Morales confirmed. "Which raises interesting questions about who poisoned whom." "Indeed," I murmured. "Has he said anything?" "Not yet. But we found a burner phone in his possession with text messages to Diana Jeffries discussing the need to clean up Victoria's mess and secure the accounts before the widow catches on." My heart raced. This was even better than I'd hoped. "That sounds rather incriminating." "Yes, it does," Morales agreed. We're bringing Ms. Jeffries in for questioning now. Given these developments, I'd like to revisit your statement about the events at your party. Of course, I said smoothly. I'm at your disposal, Detective. Though perhaps after tomorrow's court hearing? I believe it's scheduled for 10 a.m. The hearing may be postponed, he replied. Judge Harmon generally doesn't proceed with estate matters when criminal charges are pending against the claimants. How convenient, I remarked. Well, please keep me informed. And, Detective? Thank you for the update. After hanging up, I immediately called Hoffman to share the news. He was equally pleased but cautioned against overconfidence.
This buys us time, he said.
But Diana Jeffries is a lawyer. She'll know exactly how to cover her tracks and distance herself from Peter's actions. Unless she can't, I countered. Rebecca's testimony, Peter's phone, the offshore account connections, they all point to Diana's involvement. And desperate people make mistakes.
Let's hope so, Hoffman said.
I'll see you in court tomorrow, assuming the hearing proceeds. Morning arrived with another call, this time from Stephanie. Mom, you won't believe this, she said, her voice tense with excitement. Victoria just signed a confession. She admitted to poisoning Dad. I sat up straight.
What? How?
I don't know the details, but Morales said she started talking after they arrested Peter. Apparently, she's furious that he tried to kill her and is throwing everyone under the bus to save herself. Including Diana Jeffries? I asked hopefully. Especially Diana, Stephanie confirmed. She claims Diana orchestrated the whole thing. The seduction, the fraud, even Dad's poisoning when he got cold feet about leaving you. I closed my eyes, processing this information. It was almost too perfect. Victoria turning on her co-conspirators, laying the entire scheme at Diana's feet. The woman who had tried to destroy me was now destroying herself and her partners. What about the hearing? I asked. Still on, as far as I know, Stephanie replied. Diana was released after questioning. Not enough evidence yet for formal charges. She's insisting the hearing proceed as scheduled. Of course she is, I murmured. It's her last chance to salvage something from this disaster. Mom, Stephanie hesitated. There's something else you should know. Victoria mentioned that they chose Dad specifically because of you. Me? I frowned. What do you mean? She said Diana had a grudge against you from years ago. Something about a charity board position you took that she wanted? It sounds petty, but... The Westlake Foundation. I breathed, the memory suddenly crystallizing. 15 years ago, Diana was campaigning for the chair position, but the board selected me instead. She was furious, claimed I'd used Harold's influence to steal the role. So this whole thing, Dad, the company, everything, it was partly about revenge against you? Stephanie sounded incredulous. Hell hath no fury like a socialite scorned, I said dryly. Diana always did take social slights too personally. That's insane, Stephanie declared. That's high society, darling, I corrected. Now, I need to get ready for court. This promises to be quite the performance. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when I arrived. News of Peter's arrest and Victoria's poisoning had clearly leaked. Flashbulbs popped as I ascended the stairs, Hoffman at my side, Michael and Stephanie flanking us protectively. Mrs. Blackwood, is it true your husband was murdered? Did you know about the offshore accounts? Is Victoria Chambers cooperating with police? I kept my expression neutral, my pace steady. The perfect grieving widow, dignified in the face of scandal. Inside, however, I was calculating, preparing, rehearsing the confrontation to come. Diana Jeffries was already in the courtroom, looking immaculate in a charcoal suit, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. She displayed no sign of having spent hours in police questioning, her composure intact despite the collapse of her scheme. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, naked hatred flashed across her face before her professional mask slipped back into place. She nodded curtly, then returned to reviewing documents with her legal team. She's still planning to fight, I murmured to Hoffman. Of course, he replied. She has no choice. If she withdraws now, it looks like an admission of guilt. Judge Harmon entered, A stern-looking man in his 60s with piercing blue eyes and a reputation for strict adherence to legal procedure. The courtroom rose, then settled as he took his seat. I understand there have been some developments since this emergency hearing was requested, he began, looking over his reading glasses at both legal teams. Would counsel care to update the court? Diana's attorney stood first, a young, ambitious-looking woman with a razor-sharp bob and expensive shoes. Your Honor, recent events have no bearing on the validity of Mr. Blackwood's will or Ms. Chambers' rightful claim as a beneficiary. We are prepared to proceed as scheduled. Hoffman rose next, his imposing height and silver hair lending him natural authority. Your Honor, in the last 12 hours, Peter Chambers has been arrested attempting to murder Victoria Chambers, who has in turn confessed to poisoning Harold Blackwood. Both have implicated Diana Jeffries in a criminal conspiracy to defraud Blackwood Enterprises of millions. We believe these developments directly impact the will's validity and Ms. Chambers' standing as a claimant. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Harmon frowned, tapping his gavel once for silence. These are serious allegations, Mr. Hoffman. Do you have evidence to support them? We do, Your Honor. Hoffman gestured to an assistant, who approached with a thick folder. Sworn statements from Rebecca Chambers and Victoria Chambers. Financial records showing transfers to offshore accounts linked to Ms. Jeffries and communications discussing the conspiracy. Diana leaned forward, whispering urgently to her attorney, who looked increasingly concerned. The young woman stood again, adjusting her jacket nervously. Your Honor, these documents haven't been properly submitted as evidence. We haven't had time to review them or prepare a response. That's because your client was busy being questioned by police about her role in a murder conspiracy, Hoffman countered smoothly. We only received these statements ourselves this morning. Judge Harmon examined the first few pages of the folder, his expression darkening. Ms. Jeffries, he said finally, looking directly at Diana, are you currently under investigation for criminal activity related to Mr. Blackwood's death or estate? Diana rose, ignoring her attorney's attempt to stop her. Your Honor, these accusations are ridiculous. I was Mr. Blackwood's personal attorney. I prepared his will according to his explicit instructions. Any suggestion of criminal involvement is defamatory and without merit. That wasn't my question, Judge Harmon noted dryly. Are you under investigation, Ms. Jeffries? She hesitated, clearly calculating her response. The police asked me some questions about Peter Chambers, whom I barely know. I cooperated fully and was released without charge. I see. Judge Harmon turned to Hoffman. And you're suggesting that Ms. Jeffries was directly involved in a scheme to defraud Blackwood Enterprises and murder Mr. Blackwood? That is our contention, Your Honor, Hoffman confirmed. And we believe it directly impacts her standing to represent Victoria Chambers' interests in this matter, as well as the validity of the will itself, which was prepared under circumstances suggesting undue influence and criminal intent. The judge considered this, then nodded decisively. I'm inclined to agree. This hearing is postponed pending resolution of the criminal investigation. The estate will remain frozen, and all claims against it are suspended until further notice. Diana's face flushed with anger. Your Honor, this is outrageous. There's no evidence linking me to any criminal activity. These are desperate tactics by Mrs. Blackwood to retain control of assets that rightfully belong to other beneficiaries. Ms. Jeffries, Judge Harmon warned, I suggest you consult with your attorney before making further statements in my courtroom. This matter is adjourned. He banged his gavel with finality. As the courtroom began to empty, I approached Diana, who was gathering her papers with trembling hands. It's over, Diana, I said quietly. Victoria has told them everything. Peter's phone has your messages. The offshore accounts are frozen. There's nowhere left to run. She straightened, her eyes cold with hatred. You think you've won, don't you? The grieving widow, the innocent victim. Hardly innocent, I acknowledged, but certainly victorious. This isn't finished, she hissed. You have no idea what Harold really was, what he was capable of. I was doing him a favor, helping him escape a loveless marriage to a social climbing trophy wife who'd outlived her usefulness. I laughed softly. Is that what he told you? That I was the trophy?
Oh, Diana.
He played you just as thoroughly as he played me, and Victoria, and everyone else. Harold Blackwood never did anything that didn't benefit Harold Blackwood. He loved Victoria, she insisted, though doubt flickered in her eyes. He loved what she represented: youth, excitement, risk. A new beginning with none of the baggage of his old life. I leaned closer. But tell me, in all your planning and plotting, did he ever mention taking you along? Or were you just another useful tool, to be discarded once your purpose was served? Her silence was answer enough. I nodded, satisfied, and turned to leave. They'll never convict me, she called after me. I was careful. Everything was done through intermediaries, plausible deniability at every step. I paused, looking back over my shoulder. Perhaps. But your reputation is destroyed, your career over. The society that once embraced you will shun you. The clients who trusted you will abandon you. And you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when the next piece of evidence will emerge. Just like you did all those years with Harold, she countered. Pretending not to know about the affairs, the lies, the secret life? At least I was honest about who I am. The barbs struck home, but I didn't let it show. Goodbye, Diana. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. Outside the courthouse, reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Hoffman tried to usher me through, but I paused on the steps, deciding the moment called for a statement. My husband was murdered, I said clearly, the cameras capturing every word. The same people who took his life tried to take mine, and then attempted to steal his estate through fraud and deception. Thanks to the diligent work of law enforcement and our legal team, their scheme has been exposed. I look forward to justice being served, not just for me, but for everyone affected by their crimes. Questions exploded around me, but I merely nodded and continued down the steps to the waiting car, where Michael and Stephanie waited. Well played, Mom, Michael said as we pulled away from the curb. The perfect soundbite for the evening news. Diana will be livid, Stephanie added with grim satisfaction. You basically called her a murderer on national television. Let her sue me for defamation, I replied, smoothing my skirt. Discovery would be fascinating. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of police interviews, legal meetings, and media speculation. Peter Chambers was formally charged with attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. Victoria, from her hospital bed, accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony against Diana and Peter. Rebecca cooperated fully, providing documents and recordings that further implicated the others. Diana Jeffries, however, remained free, though under investigation. As she'd predicted, the evidence against her was circumstantial, suggestive, but not definitive. She'd been careful to maintain distance from the actual crimes, using Victoria and Peter as her hands while she remained ostensibly clean. A week after the courthouse confrontation, I returned home from another exhausting day of meetings to find an unexpected visitor waiting in my study, Detective Morales. Mrs. Blackwood, he said, rising as I entered. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. Your housekeeper was kind enough to let me wait. Detective, I nodded, setting down my purse. I assume this isn't a social call. No, he agreed. I wanted to update you personally on some developments in the case. Please, I gestured to the chairs by the fireplace. Would you like a drink? No, thank you. He sat, opening a small notebook. We've completed the toxicology screening on your husband's tissue samples. The results confirm the presence of digitalis, the same compound found in Victoria Chambers' system. I nodded, unsurprised. So Victoria was telling the truth about poisoning Harold. Partially, Morales said, watching me closely. The levels suggest long-term administration, small doses over weeks, gradually increasing, consistent with the heart attacks he experienced before his death. How calculating, I murmured. To slowly poison him, making it appear to be natural heart failure. Yes, Morales agreed. Very calculating. Almost as calculating as switching champagne glasses with someone you suspected might be trying to poison you. I met his gaze steadily. Are you still pursuing that theory, Detective? Despite Victoria's confession and Peter's attempt to silence her. I find it interesting, he said carefully, that you anticipated Victoria might try to harm you. That you were prepared to switch glasses so quickly, so smoothly that no one noticed. Woman's intuition, I suggested with a slight smile. Or perhaps simple self-preservation after discovering my husband and his mistress had plotted my death. Morales nodded thoughtfully. The emails. You mentioned finding them before the party. On a USB drive Harold had hidden. I confirmed. I was going through his things after the funeral and discovered it. So, you knew Victoria was dangerous before you invited her to your celebration. It wasn't a question. I suspected she might be, I acknowledged. But I needed proof of her connection to Harold's death. What better way to expose a snake than to give it room to strike? A risky strategy, Morales observed. She could have succeeded. But she didn't, I pointed out. And now she, Peter, and eventually Diana will face justice for what they've done. Morales closed his notebook and leaned forward. Mrs. Blackwood, I'm going to be very direct with you. I believe you switched glasses with Victoria Chambers because you knew she would try to poison you. I believe you deliberately put yourself in danger to expose her. And I believe you've orchestrated this entire sequence of events, from Rebecca's cooperation to Peter's arrest to Diana's public humiliation, with remarkable precision. I raised an eyebrow. Are you accusing me of something, Detective? No, he said after a moment. I'm acknowledging a worthy adversary. Someone who refused to be a victim and instead became the architect of her enemy's downfall. That's quite a dramatic interpretation, I remarked. I'm simply a widow seeking justice for my husband's murder. Of course, he agreed, standing. Well, I've taken enough of your time. Thank you for your continued cooperation with our investigation. As I walked him to the door, he paused. One last question, Mrs. Blackwood. The digitalis in your garden, did you plan it knowing its properties, or was that truly coincidental? I smiled enigmatically. Detective, at my age, one develops an interest in many subjects: horticulture, toxicology, justice. Sometimes these interests overlap in unexpected ways. He nodded, understanding the non-answer for what it was. Good day, Mrs. Blackwood. Good day, Detective. Do let me know when Diana Jeffries is formally charged. I'd like to be there for that particular moment. 3 months later, I stood in the garden, watching as workers removed the last of the foxglove plants. The purple flowers had served their purpose, both practically and as conversation pieces during the investigation. Now it was time for new growth, new beginnings. The criminal cases were proceeding slowly, but inexorably. Peter had been denied bail, deemed a flight risk due to his connections to offshore accounts. Victoria, still recovering from kidney damage, had been placed under house arrest after providing extensive testimony against her co-conspirators. Rebecca had received a reduced sentence in exchange for her cooperation and seemed genuinely remorseful for her role in the scheme. Diana Jeffries had finally been arrested 2 weeks earlier, after investigators discovered encrypted communications directly linking her to Harold's poisoning. She'd maintained her innocence, of course, but the evidence was mounting. Her fall from grace had been spectacular, disbarred, socially ostracized, her carefully constructed life in ruins. As for Blackwood Enterprises, it was thriving under Michael's leadership. We'd recovered most of the stolen funds, restructured the board to eliminate Harold's cronies, and implemented transparency measures to prevent future fraud. The company's stock had actually risen following the scandal, as investors appreciated the swift, decisive handling of the crisis. My phone rang. Stephanie, calling from the car. We're almost there, Mom, she said. The twins are excited about the pool party. Everything's ready, I assured her. Rosa made those little sandwiches they love. It was my 70th birthday, a milestone I'd once dreaded but now embraced. 10 years since Harold's death, since the lottery win that had transformed my life, since the night Victoria Chambers had unwittingly drunk from her own poisoned glass. The celebration would be small, just family, and a few genuine friends.
No pretense, no social climbing, no hidden agendas.
Just people who truly cared about each other enjoying a beautiful summer day. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed an envelope on the garden table, cream-colored, expensive stationery, my name written in an elegant hand I didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a newspaper clipping about Diana's arrest. The note read simply, "Elaine, you orchestrated their downfall brilliantly. Harold would have been impressed and terrified." I certainly am. A fellow widow who recognizes excellence when she sees it. It was unsigned, but I had my suspicions about the sender, another wealthy widow from our social circle whose husband had died under questionable circumstances years earlier. We'd never been close, but perhaps we had more in common than I'd realized. I smiled, tucking the note into my pocket as Stephanie's car pulled into the driveway. My grandchildren tumbled out, racing toward me with squeals of delight. My son and daughter followed more sedately, carrying gifts and overnight bags. "Happy birthday, Mom," Michael said, embracing me. "How does it feel to be 70? "Surprisingly satisfying," I replied, watching as the twins discovered the pool toys Rosa had set out. "I'm exactly where I want to be, with exactly the people I want around me." "No regrets?" Stephanie asked quietly. I thought about Harold, about Victoria, about the path that had led me here, the betrayals and discoveries, the risks and revelations, the transformation from dutiful wife to formidable adversary. "Not a single one," I assured her. "Now let's celebrate. After all, I have so much to be thankful for." As my family gathered around the pool, laughing and talking in the warm sunshine, I raised my glass in a private toast. To survival, to justice, to the unexpected freedom that comes from facing your darkest hour and emerging stronger. The mistress had tried to poison me. Instead, she had poisoned her own future and unwittingly liberated mine. That night, as I locked the doors before bed, I noticed a shadow moving near the gates. A car idling just beyond the property line, its occupant watching the house. For a moment, I felt a chill of apprehension. Then I remembered the note from the safe deposit box, the final warning. She failed. But I won't. Someone else from Harold and Victoria's circle? Another conspirator emerging from the shadows? Or simply my imagination, fueled by memories of past dangers? I closed the curtains without concern. Let them watch. Let them plot. Let them underestimate me, as so many had before. I was Elaine Blackwood, 70 years old, survivor of betrayal and attempted murder, architect of my enemy's destruction. I had faced death and smiled back. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, and if another threat emerged from the shadows of Harold's past, I would be ready. After all, I'd learned from the best, from Harold himself, from Victoria, from Diana. I'd observed their methods, their weaknesses, their fatal flaws, and I'd improved upon them all. The game might not be over, but I was no longer a pawn. I was the queen on this chessboard, and I intended to remain standing when all the other pieces had fallen. Let them come. I would be waiting, with a smile on my face and poison in the garden. The end.